AI tools will offer you, like it's going to shift from just the boring kind of generic HR tools, right, into more like personalized work tech, right?
Yep.
Tech that can able to upskill me specific to my learning, to my goal development, to what I want to go in my career. So there will be that upskilling happening. And I think we're already seeing that happening, right? We're seeing a lot of like AI startups offering this personalized learning, personalized upskilling. And we've seen a lot of, like I remember coming across a company called Tech Wolf, right? Understanding like skills you have, understanding the skills needed for your next kind of journey and how you upskill your employees. So I think it's more of like lifting employees into the next level, but it's just like a pure replacement.
Welcome to Pioneers, the show where we explore the intersection between humanity and AI. I'm your host, Ankur Patel. Over the last 10 years, I've built 3 AI startups, written 2 books about the subject, and I run a weekly AI newsletter. I also regularly teach and speak about the topic at conferences. This technology has grown faster than I think any of us could have imagined, and it's making us ask really important questions, such as how ethical is AI? What will this technology look like in a few years, let alone a few months? And most importantly, does it have the power to truly change the world? And what does it mean for you? On this show, I'll be interviewing the founders, operators, and pioneers that are introducing AI into their companies and industries. We'll be asking them the really heavy-hitting questions that make them dig deep into the core of what we do. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Ankur Patel, and today my guest is Sam Nasser, investor at ADP Ventures. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be joining you.
So for those in the audience that do not know, could you maybe give a brief introduction to ADP and the scale of work that ADP does? And then more specifically, the role that you play as part of the ventures team there.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So, can I do a 10 seconds walk through ADP? Obviously, ADP is a leader, global leader in HCM and payroll. We serve about 40 to 50 million employees around 140 countries. So we're a global company. So that's kind of ADP. People think about ADP just payroll, but we go beyond payroll. We're a tech company offering HCM, benefits, 401k, you name it. And we serve clients across segments, right, from SMBs to mid-market to large enterprises, in addition to POs and compliance solutions. ADP Ventures sits obviously within the larger ADP as an innovation hub for ADP. The Ventures team has existed for a while, actually, as an R&D lab incubator. Over the years, we added our second pillar, which is like the go-to-market/pilot with startups. And about 18 months ago, we launched the investment arm of the venture team, right? And our mandate here is really to find amazing companies that ADP can invest and partner with, in addition to continue what we're doing in the incubator side, building amazing products.
So it seems like there are 2 major theses: the incubator part, which is perhaps a form of innovation and kind of getting new ideas in the door to benefit the organization at large. On the investment side, is it primarily to benefit the balance sheet or the growth rather of ADP at large, or is it kind of a segmented, maybe judged purely based on return on capital in a way that a traditional venture capital would be? Which of the 2 is?
I would say we are really more strategic investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
We bring the strategic lens to our work. And what I mean by that is, when we look at an investment, when you're following a startup or investment, right, we look at a few pillars, right? Can this startup solve a problem for our clients, immediate problem for our clients? Can this startup cover an existing gap within our product offering? Can this startup help us scale kind of offering or scale to a new market or scale globally, right? Like we did with our portfolio companies, Worky. Worky is an early stage startup, so we invested in Mexico, offering HR and payroll. At that time, we have operation in Mexico. We wanted to expand into the Mexican market, so we leveraged Worky. Additionally, I would say one last pillar for the investment arm or the venture team is really some experimental, right? Just kind of with new technologies. I would say we shifted more toward very strategic investors now, but we are still looking at new technologies. It doesn't mean we're not a financial investor. I want to be clear here, right? Like, we still look at unit economics, we still look at returns, we still look at ARR growth and all those metrics, right? But I think we take the strategic lens very seriously. And it's not just a buzzword, right? It's really, can this startup like partner with us? Can we go to market together, right?
When startups come to you, how should they think about what a CVC like yours could bring versus what a traditional venture capital firm can bring? Because traditional venture capital might bring capital, but they might also have a platform. Maybe it's one, maybe it's both. But a CVC seems like it has maybe even additional benefits that aren't maybe apparent to many startups. So what are some of those benefits that you would point to, that a ADP Ventures could bring to startups that enter the orbit?
Anchor, you're absolutely right? We can actually, give you more than a check, right? I'm going to talk in general about maybe ADP Ventures here. I'm sure other CVCs do the same. Given that we are strategic investors and we kind of sit in the mothership, which is ADP, when we invest in a startup, we really look, can we partner with a startup? Can we go to market together? So what we can offer you is basically distribution, access to like potentially thousands of clients through like a joint go-to-market or embedding your product offering within ADP. It's huge, right? For an early stage startup, trying to gain traction with clients and increase their ARR. That's a huge value add. That's number one. Number two, even if we don't do sometimes a full partnership, we can do a small pilot. We can also like help you get into our marketplace, right? We have a lot of people are not familiar, but we have something called the ADP Marketplace. Kind of think about like the Apple Store or the Google Play, right? Where we can join the ADP Marketplace, which is very selective, right? It's very selective because we get a lot of applications and we can't accept every single company that applied to be in our marketplace. And finally, I would say really like the mentorship, right? The guidance, the expertise, We're ADP, we have about 60,000 employees. If I remember correctly, the last number I checked. And, we've existed since the 40s, right? 1940s. So we have deep expertise when it comes to payroll, when it comes to HCM, when it comes to benefits. We have incredibly smart, talented people at ADP, whether at leadership or whether in product or engineering. So we can help you kind of be your thinking buddy, help you solve our issues, whether it's technical issues or go-to-market issues.
Could you maybe point us to a startup that you invested in or partnered with that has been what I would call maybe a poster child or standout success, where you were able to invest in the startup and it led to maybe strategic benefits to the organization at large in the ways that you hoped it would, that thesis played out?
Yeah, I can probably think about, one of our portfolio companies called Naya, and they're actually New York City based. Since I'm in New York City, we love Naya at ADP Ventures. Naya, but basically in a nutshell, what Naya does is really, they have this AI decision support tool for employees to help them navigate the complex process of selecting benefits. Obviously, they've expanded now beyond benefits into wealth and leave an absence into other product offering. But we've integrated Naya into our flagship WFM Workforce Now platform, right? And they've had to reach over 600,000 employees. And what I love about this partnership, it's just like there's benefit for everybody, right? And the employees, you're able to navigate really a daunting process, figure out what's the right benefits for me and my family. Especially if you're like, hey, I'm expecting a child next year, or I'm like gonna be single. There's a lot of like live events that could kind of make it down for employees. And there's the second, let's look at the employers, right? They're able to like create the right benefits for their employees now. And instead of wasting money offering benefits that nobody is utilizing, right? And they're able to get data on the right benefits. And then brokers, right? They're benefiting from this offering. Now they have data points where employees are using, what they're wanting, so they can next year, when they can package all the benefits to the employers, they could make it a more personalized experience. So it's like almost a trifecta, right? You get the product market fit, you get the scale, you get the innovation, everybody's happy.
No, I love that. It seems like you're able to use the ADP company and the platform that it provides to go and get more scale, get more opportunities for a startup that you invest in, right? So when there's great alignment like that, it benefits ADP at large, but there's also that financial return that you achieve by, again, helping that startup kind of scale more quickly, right? Through that distribution that you said is a huge benefit that ADP Ventures is able to provide. Maybe let's take a step back. And obviously the challenge with a lot of startups now, particularly doing AI, is trying to figure out how to sell into large organizations like ADP, 60,000 people. There are many people that are buyers and influencers and evaluators of new technology. When you look at startups today, what are maybe common things that you look for as criteria to evaluate its fit in the way that ADP Ventures operates?
We get obviously bombarded with like hundreds of requests a year, maybe with actually thousands at some points. So I think we look for them, like, when I meet, at least me personally, with a startup, I want to understand what problem they're solving before anything, right? Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and why are you solving for it, right? And then once can I understand how big is the market, and like, did you validate it with research, with use cases, right? And then I want to understand what technology you're using. Now everything's AI, so it's like everybody's offering AI. I want to understand what is this AI and what is the intended uses for the AI. Are you just trying to like quickly save like employers 10% in cost, but then offering this complex product that is gonna make it like 50% more complex to operate? Versus like, are you adding like 100% efficiency, right? To the end users, and solving a real pain point for the employer, not just like it can't just be like a 5-10% marginal, right? Because it's gonna be. So those kind of like some of the areas we look in general when we evaluate startups, and then obviously when it comes to AI, we double click. Right? What models are you guys using? How do you train your data? Where are you getting this data from? Did you build your own model, or it's just like, are you building on top of existing models, right? And how do you keep kind of your data secure in those models?
Let's talk also a little bit about moat, right? So I think AI is super incredible. I mean, in the way that you get really beautiful experiences and value created. But from startups all the way to the very large players, everyone's being disrupted by AI, and the pace that AI really hits you with improvements to models, what you could do with those models in different frameworks like MCP and whatnot. It feels like speed is your only edge, which is, can you move quicker and faster to get more of the market share and build a durable business and moat? And the moat might be technology, it might be go to market, it might be a combination thereof, it might be something else. But how do you think about evaluating the defensibility of a startup that might be doing really well, but then 2 years from now, maybe they're just a innovation cycle or two away from a major foundation model company, kind of taking that market share away from the startup that had an early edge in this space?
Yeah, amazing question, Anka. And also the question we ask ourselves every day. I mean, I always I think about it all the time. There's no like easy answer, right? Right now with the AI, and like you will see new innovation, but honestly, within 6 months or a year, someone either like a foundation model will be doing it, or other startups will be just coming in super quickly. So I'll say there is a defense for just going quickly and capturing as much as you can from the market. But at the same time, like sometimes just other startups like 6 months down the road from doing exactly what you're doing, given how quickly AI is simplifying building startups. I'll give you a really good, actually, before I give you the example, so like, I think I want to kind of just take a step back. Like when we look at those AI companies, a lot of them you end up investing in founders, right? You're really investing in their kind of their vision, their strategy. And a good example of that I want to mention is a recent acquisition. You can call it acquisition. It's not pure acquisition, but Salesforce recently, added to their portfolio a company called MoonHub, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with that company. We're looking at it. We're looking at the AI recruiting space, and there's a lot of companies popping up doing. They're innovating. Great team, great founders. I mean, and this is my kind of 2 cents. I think Salesforce probably more. I don't see Salesforce potentially going into HCM, trying to build AI recruiting capabilities, but probably recruit the founding team because they added into Salesforce because of their technical acumen, their vision. So there is that as well, right? Like, so when it comes to evaluating AI companies, you're really looking at the founder. Yeah, you're looking at how defensible is this technology, right? If OpenAI can do the same in 6 months, do a better job, then we take a pause. So like that's why like it takes. We actually spend a lot of time before we make an investment. A space where there's a lot of players already popping up. A CFO stack is another one of that, right? A lot of companies trying to automate the back office. So we're taking let's kind of assess the space, see where the space is going. And then eventually you have to make a bet,
Right.
I mean, if you were a bigger VC fund, I would say, well, probably invest in a bunch of them, like spread your eggs. But eventually you want to like find a startup that has, strong founding team, clear vision. Their tech is defensible for what it is, right? Like they have good data, they have proprietary data, especially if they have proprietary data, like then they have an edge, right? Also, like another I think we actually look at is they have an edge when it comes to workflow, right? Are they just like a layer over ATS, right? Or are they like they figure out a way to like really embed themselves? Are they just another tool? Yeah. So those all questions we ask or we try to assess when we make an investment in an AI company.
Yeah, I think the ability to move quickly is really important. Not only in innovating and coming up with new ideas and testing those ideas, but also understanding what ideas, what features, what capabilities are seeing adoption in the market. And maybe someone else originated that idea, but can you be quick to clone? Right? Can you be quick to copy? And I think you have to copy some, you have to innovate in other areas. You also have to be equally willing to pivot away from things that you thought might work, but then you're getting feedback from the market that it's not working. But I think speed is really critical. And I think the surprising thing is that there is ample white space left by the foundation model companies. And obviously, like if we just look at a completely different space for just a second, like code generation with Cursor and Windsurf, even the Lovables and the Bolts, it's not that they were the first to market with their products or had some unique capability out the door. Basically, GitHub Copilot, even OpenAI with Codex and such. They were building. Everyone was building this market, but they just didn't build the right experience and they didn't get the right distribution quickly. And so you saw other new players gain market share in a big way, right? To the point where like OpenAI, even though they could probably replicate a lot of what Windsurf is doing, they just couldn't like move as quickly as Windsurf's team is moving, and so the acquisition made sense, right? So I think there's plenty of opportunity, but I think there has to be the right preconditions for startups and founders to have the right vision, execute on the vision, and then I think they can take on bigger players that maybe have their eyes on the market, but like don't get the right product and right distribution built out in time.
I agree 100% right. I mean, those foundation models are great and they can do probably most of those things, but they don't want to do all of those things. They don't have it probably like, and you just can't be amazing at every single thing. And there's probably bigger fish to fry for them. So there is a white space and speed to market is crucial in many instances.
So let's flip this a little bit. I know we've been talking a lot about startups and how you evaluate them for strategic fit with ADP. Let's talk about how you position startups within ADP, because that's an entirely different set of negotiation you have to do. And it also feels like perhaps the role of venture capital, particularly a CVC like ADP Ventures, has changed to where it's not just investing in a startup, it's also a driver for innovation. So could you speak a little bit maybe about the evolving role of CVCs within larger organizations like ADP? And then, what I'll do is I want to follow up with a few questions on how you sell the startup into a larger organization and where some of the friction and reservations may arise from within ADP in testing and trying out what startups have to offer.
Okay, awesome. There's multiple portions of this question, so I can go one by one here. So when I talk about the roles of CVC within ADP, so in CVCs within kind of enterprises in general, I think like the role has evolved, right? And there is kind of various different CVCs. Some are more like independent funds, right? And they operate more of like a financial investor, right? I think Google Ventures and a few others act in that fashion. And there's more like in the middle, and there's more like strategic like ADP. So I think, they all have their value. They all offer something unique, but I'm a little biased. Obviously, I work at ADP Ventures. So I will say CVCs like ADP can add a lot of value. And we've spoken about the value already that can bring in terms of distribution and kind of mentorship and guidance. But in general, like the way we, for example, at ADP Ventures kind of work internally, right? We, at the end of the day, we also serve as ADP and ADP leadership. So we form this kind of close relationships across BUs at ADP. So we are constantly in conversation, in meetings, trying to understand what is their current need. What is their gaps? How can we make their life easier? What kind of technology could help them and help their clients as well, right? So we're always kind of like there listening, and then giving our kind of nature being a VC fund as well. So we're always kind of looking at the market. So we're always trying to syndicate this data, right? We're listening on gap and needs from one angle from our leaders and presidents at ADP, and also listening to the market signals, talking to VCs, talking to startups. So a lot of times we're able to kind of predict where the market is going. But the advantage we have, we can also listen to exactly what the needs, right? Sometimes the market is going in a place that might be not a clear need or not a big market opportunity. But if I am listening to like a president leader at ADP who's servicing 500,000 clients in their business unit, and they're telling me there's a need for those clients, so I can help kind of bridge that gap, right, and syndicate this to our advantage, and kind of help identify the exact innovation they're looking for. So that's when like we kick off this journey. Like we are really like constantly talking to our PUs, building theses, to co-building theses, I would say, with them, understanding their need, validating them with market research, primary and secondary. We have like an intelligence team within ADP. We're like super helpful, super incredible talent. We're able to conduct like research, whether it's surveys or market validation, and then in addition to like the external work we do through the VC arm, right? And then we put it all together. We find a bunch of startups, right? And then we bring them just like to meet ADP like kind of leaders within ADP. Like they help us kind of assess like which one has the best product market fit, right? In terms of like technology, UI, in terms of like a scale. And then once we reach like an agreement, we start flushing out what a potential partnership investment look like. And then from there, we can hopefully make the investment and then the partnership. And I can talk about a recent example like we did with Thatch, right? We invested in Thatch. Are you familiar with Thatch, Ankur?
I'm not. Yeah.
So Thatch is, I think, in my opinion, a leader in the ICRA space, providing individual coverage health reimbursement. If you're not familiar with ICRA, it basically, whether you have like traditional employers offer group insurance to their employees, right? But small businesses that can't afford like to offer a group plan, or they don't meet the minimum requirements, but they still want to offer health insurance to their employees. They can leverage the individual marketplace, what's called ICRA plans, and then Thatch did an amazing job building that infrastructure to connect employers to the individual marketplace and have them choose the right plan for them. And so we started talking to our business units early on last year, understanding their needs, what's missing within our product offering, and then ICRA was a growth lever for them. Great. So we built a thesis together, and then we started talking to a bunch of startups in the space, and then we've introduced them to many of those startups, and eventually we've landed on Thatch, and we made the investment in April. Yeah, we've invested in Thatch. We went on the round in April. We had a bunch of other investors joining, obviously A16 and GC and Index. So we're super excited about Thatch.
That's amazing. I mean, it feels like you have an unfair advantage in many ways, in a very positive way, which is you understand what ADP at large needs. Where are the gaps? What are the theses? And by working closely with the business units, you're then able to take that frame of the world and then evaluate startups with that lens. And then more importantly, you're able to serve the startups by bringing them in and giving them a shot on goal with the business units that need their technology, need that capability. And then you're able to evaluate which is the right startup, which startup is most likely to win based on what the business units say. And then you're able to use that lens to then invest in the startup that is more likely to win, at least it's a more informed view. And at the same time, you're able to add strategic value to the organization because the business unit really needed that capability, and you're able to bring companies in that fit that thesis, right? So I could see how this two-sided market for you is super valuable, and it's something that is very unique to CVCs like yours versus a financial VC that maybe doesn't have that pulse on the market in the same way that you would.
I agree, and you've said it really well, Ankur. I think CVC could offer an unfair advantage if there's properly, But you're right.
So could we talk a little bit about the future of work? I mean, it's a loaded topic. It means a lot of different things, but in many ways, I think it becomes very topical right now because you could argue that every agentic AI startup is trying to design the future of work in whatever space they're in. So, content generation or deep research companies are going to change the work that analysts do or consultants do. Coding assistants are changing the work that developers do, and that's going to reshape how developers get work done. Might change hiring trends in that space, and you kind of do the X number of other areas, including automation and such. How do you view the future of work when it comes to hiring, maybe reskilling and retraining talent in light of all of the new AI capabilities that should, make work easier to do, but of course change the nature of people's roles in turn as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's like, I mean, obviously, we're always debating what's the future of work. I think we have our kind of, I mean, at least me personally, I have my own kind of hypothesis, I would say, where the future of work is heading, right? I can like actually before I speak of some of the use case, like what I think future of work is headed to. I kind of believe in something called centaur model, right? Where
Mhm.
AI is here to really kind of replace the manual kind of boring work, right?
Mhm.
The repetitive task that nobody like wants to do, and just kind of leave space for people to do like meaningful work they care about, more the human aspect, right? The
Yeah.
empathy, the strategic work, the relationship building that AI will never gonna be able to replace humans, right? So in that model, like it does require like a little bit of a personalization, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
As you mentioned, like if you're not really necessarily replacing, humans. I mean, there will be some this like a it's been more like a shift, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the first innovation, right? That humans
Yeah.
race is,
Yeah. Yeah.
people are making us more AI. Like it's a big innovation, right? But like, we've had the internet boom. We've had like I remember like kind of reading about Microsoft Word and Excel coming and people freaking out about you
Sure.
know, and then so yeah, so like and that thing like what AI could do, like the personalization, right? Like as an employee, for example, AI tools will offer you like it's gonna shift from just the boring kind of generic HR tools, right, into more like personalized work tech, right?
Yep.
Tech that can able to upskill me specific to my learning, to my goal development, to what I want to go in my career. So there will be that upskilling happening, and I think we're already seeing that happening, right? We're seeing a lot of like AI startups offering this personalized learning,
Yep.
personalized upskilling, and we've seen a lot of like I remember coming across a company called Tech Wolf, right? Understanding like the skills you have, understanding the skills needed for your next kind of journey, and how you upskill your employees. So I think it's more of like lifting employees into the next level versus just like a pure replacement.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's more about supporting people in what they're doing. Now, of course, the net effect might be that there might be need for fewer people in certain roles. But I think anytime you've seen new technology come online, it's increased the demand for that role. So I'll just give you an example like coding assistants or making developers more efficient, right? That doesn't mean that we need fewer developers. It just means that we may actually ship more software that potentially we couldn't get to or design or basically there's you're only maybe bottlenecked by human creativity, right? If you could imagine more, you could do more, and now you have developers that can produce more. So I think we start building really creative things. It leads to more, and in some ways like insanely more new creative things that we couldn't have done and got into, right? So I think that's as just as likely to happen, maybe more likely to happen than like this. What maybe like some gloom and doom version of this, which is like you'll just have fewer jobs and there'll be large amounts of unemployment. But I think one of the things that we see and talk about the labor markets here, which is I think topical since and it's the EDP Ventures, is we have very low unemployment rates. So
Exactly.
it's not that people are getting you're seeing the unemployment rate increase and tick up in a material way. Like this is you're talking about some of the most employed markets that we've ever seen. This innovation, I think, should help alleviate some of the constraints, especially if you because of demographic trends, right? So you're seeing a lot of people retire, and that's also going to leave a gap in the market that hopefully AI and AI agents and automation and such can help fill the void in. So I share this Centaur model. I haven't quite heard it that way, but it makes a lot of sense.
No, I appreciate it. And I 100% agree with you. I mean, I'll give you like, if I may, and one example also, like, we're looking at the AI recruiting space right now.
Mhm.
Like, you know, I don't think like AI recruiting will eventually. It's not the goal is just to replace all of your HR team, right?
Mhm.
But now the issue is like, your HR team is spending weeks and months like finding the right candidate for you.
Yeah.
And it's like embedded in like spreadsheet and like just wasting a lot of time like talking to their own candidates versus doing that like the work that really matters to them, right? Like
Yeah.
their kind of employees strategy and kind of there's a lot of work this kind of HR departments could be doing and instead of just getting buried on like hundreds of like LinkedIn leads. So what AI recruiting is really doing is just like helping you just like simplify and streamline and alleviate the HR kind of HR teams and departments because they can focus on work that's more meaningful,
Yeah.
like for them and more strategic work versus just like months trying to find one candidate and sometimes it's not that you hire it and it's like
Yeah.
they leave within 6 months. We start the same process. We've all felt that pain, Yeah.
That's exactly right. I think what you're seeing, and these are just a few examples, is no one will design, and no one is hopefully designing job descriptions from scratch, right? You're always
Yeah.
going to use some AI version to start, and it's really remarkably good. Same thing with creating resumes and such. So I think where the effort of the HR team goes into is finding the best candidates, really running them through a very maybe high touch interview experience to make sure the fit is right. And I think the net outcome of all of this is that a hiring manager is going to have a much higher hit rate in terms of the candidates that are shown to that person. And the candidate is going to have a more beautiful experience, right? You're improving the experience on both sides of this equation. I think that's where we get to. It's not that you're going to hire fewer HR people. Talent is one of the most important things for any organization.
Yeah.
It's just the experience is going to get better for both the candidate and the employer.
And the employer, that you're right, the hiring manager. We haven't even spoken about that exactly. So yeah, well, I'm excited what the kind of trend in work and like HR and the kind of future of work, right?
Yeah. So could we talk a little bit about what I'd say competitive pressures does an organization like ADP face? Because it's always hard outside looking in to see like an ADP, which is so dominant in the market that it's in, to really understand where's the competitive pressure coming from. Of course, there are startups that enter this arena that do get some great scale, right? So while not directly perhaps relevant, it's like companies like Deal or companies like Rippling that have gotten massive scale in this space. Could you talk a little bit about what things you look at as competitive pressures in the market and how you potentially through your role right at ADP Ventures are helping an organization like ADP be more competitive and innovative to outcompete the emerging competition?
We're constantly scanning, like what our competitors are doing, trying to understand where the market is shifting, and obviously ADP, we've been a leader in the industry for over 70 years, right? And
Mhm.
we continue to be the leader in the industry. And I think there's space for everybody, and but it doesn't mean we can't innovate. And ADB has been innovating tremendously to kind of stay ahead of competition. And yeah, we are. I'm gonna leave it out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sam. That makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah,
think the other big thing that is a little bit harder for companies outside looking in is how do you really scale from pilot programs to enterprise-wide deployment? All right, it's a very topical thing with AI because AI is quick to demo. You could prototype, you get a lot of great features built out. But I'm curious what some of the challenges are when these companies, these AI companies, are taking work done in pilots and then trying to scale to the large enterprise that is ADP today.
yeah. This is an amazing question, Ankur. We see this a lot. It's easier to like start and but then to scale. It gets much more complex, especially when you're trying to go up market through like for enterprise clients. There's few like I would say few like hurdles that startups face when they're
Mhm.
trying to scale. I think that some of the I'm gonna talk about three of them here. One is really data, the data quality, right? Enterprise data is just really messy and complex and silos, right? And then you need that kind of AI that could kind of not only combine the data, figure out which the discrepancy between this different sources of data, right? So this is where it kind of one of probably like the hardest point in my opinion is like the data and data quality. Second, I would say is like just getting buy-in, right? Just once you go up market, there's just many more stakeholders get involved. You have compliance, you have legal, you have marketing, you have go-to-market, right? So getting all those buy-ins just it's just a little bit more complex than just like when you're dealing with like as SMB clients, right? Usually the buyer is a lot of times like, it could be the CEO buyer for like for IT, for HR, for payroll, or the CFO. Sometimes this, and then I'll say like really latency becomes really matters once you go up market, right? Or when trying to scale. What works for a few clients or just like one client with a few users, it's just not going to work as seamlessly as for like a larger client or a client with many more users. But I would say startups that's built from when they're built from the beginning with that in mind,
Yeah.
typically have an easier time scaling, right? When startups that's kind of built where AI first kind of open architecture, right? That could just make it easy to like have bi-directional APIs to our most system of records or any other systems, right? This is kind of like typically have an easier time, I'll say, scaling.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you presented two major things. One's the cycle is long and complex. So legal, finance, procurement, like that whole bit takes a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time, far longer than startups expect if it's their first time selling into enterprise. Second big thing is like scale and resiliency matter, right? So what happens if there's an outage with one of the providers,
yeah,
like let's say AWS, you can't like have outages like that, right? You have to
exactly.
have resiliency built in, and of course the volume, both like persistent volume and then spiky volume. How does your infrastructure scale to meet the demands of an ADP? And so I think it's not for the faint of heart, but I think if
Yeah,
you thoughtfully, kind of have an architecture that is built for enterprise, and again, it takes time to build the robustness of capabilities that enterprise truly needs. But I think that yeah, it's harder to do, it takes longer to do. But if you do it well, and you serve an account like ADP really remarkably well, it's also very sticky, right? And then when you think about like building a moat over time, some of the moat is really building the relationships and serving large enterprises well. Because if you serve them well, and it's a core part of what they do as a business, they aren't just going to next year like swap another vendor for what you do. So the inertia in some ways works in your favor once you're in the door.
exactly. Because enterprise is hard to get into the door, but once you're at the door, it's typically like most enterprises like they don't switch vendors very often, right? So
Hmm.
it's just like and that's like we brought a really good point, right? Like I think it's like the founder's vision, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your thought about someone who's building amazing company, right? Like having that vision, like where are you going? Like when you're building from day one, right? Where do I want to end up, right? I mean, sometimes you do have to pivot and you have to be flexible, but having that vision and having that also just like technical acumen, right? Having an amazing product team, having an amazing engineering team to pivot and just kind of meet an enterprise need. I actually have a really good example for you.
Hmm.
And I won't mention a name just for kind of privacy reasons here.
Hmm.
Working with one of our portfolio companies, right? Trying to integrate them. They've already had like an onboarding experience,
Hmm.
but at some point, one of the kind of vendor they use for onboarding, it does not necessarily meet the rigorous compliance what ADP requires. Especially when it comes to data storage, not a great
Hmm.
company that they're using, but doesn't meet like our standards for compliance, right? So that company, like was immediately able, like you'll think like if someone else was just like, oh, things falling apart. That company has an amazing, right, amazing engineering product and also amazing founders. We're
Uh-huh.
able to quickly remove kind of, well, not even, like change the onboarding experience. Take out that vendor, bring a new vendor, or not, actually not bring a new vendor. Like they figure out a way to like do it a little bit more manual. Just it was just
Uh-huh.
temporarily fixed until we fully integrate with them, right? And just like that. But again, so like they're startups like that that's built for enterprise, right? Built to kind of move quickly, built to like with like a strong engineering team, a strong vision, are able to kind of adapt to enterprise needs quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is so important, not only for startups building, but even individuals working in their respective roles. I'm sure it's probably true of ADP at large as well. It's like you need a very strong why. Like, why do you exist?
Yeah,
What are you here to do? What's that mission at large? And you could be more flexible on the how. How do you get there, right? What do you build to get to where you need to get to? But that's a really important bit. If your North Star isn't clear, you won't know, like you just be kind of flailing on the water, right? And so that North Star needs to be crystal clear, and you need to work your way towards it. And you will need to be a little bit flexible on the how you get there, because you might find that the initial path you had, requires a kind of a detour. Maybe you need to kind of work around it, some things. But I think that's what this startup exhibited that you referred to, is that willingness to kind of go and change things to kind of meet the demands at large, and to do that quickly, and such. So I think that's super critical. I think it speaks to resiliency even of the startup founders, right? That did that to serve ADP.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I actually, this is my own like thinking. I think about a startup as like the founder is like almost like being in the ocean, and a startup is like a sailboat.
Yeah.
Like, there will be rough water, there will be like
Yeah.
storms, there will be, but if you have your sails set up, like you have a North Star where you're going with your sailboat, you will hopefully get there eventually. But it's like, if you don't have a direction, what's going to happen is the wind will blow you in every single direction,
Yeah.
and eventually the boat will, sink, right?
Yeah.
So, and the North Star, like it's guiding you. It's very important. I love how you phrased it.
Well, thanks, Sam, for being on the show. Incredible insights, and very much look forward to things to come from ADP Ventures, working with startups to benefit ADP at large.
Thank you so much, Anka. I really appreciate it.